it's about utility. And so it's not about we've transacted, therefore our loyalty program is good. It's about that sustained relationship. It's about that utility that a customer has with a brand. You don't really want customers that you have to pay to keep. If they're only staying there for the loyalty program, then they're probably going to be expensive and they're probably not going to be very loyal. I'd rather have customers that are loyal because I add a lot of value to their life. I listen to them. I understand them. I'm there when they need it. They remember me. Uber has become, I'm amazed at how it's transcended from, a taxi service to a mobility platform to arguably now it's a lifestyle brand for me, where it's mobility, it's groceries, it's food, it just occupies so much of what I do now.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV, a show for loyalty marketing professionals. I'm Paula Thomas, the founder and CEO of Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV, where we feature insightful conversations with loyalty professionals from the world's leading brands. Today's episode is hosted by Nyeleti Sue Angel Nkuna, a customer loyalty strategist with a proven record of helping blue-chip global brands forge deeper connections with their customers. Enjoy.
All right, as Paula just said, my name is Nyeleti, and on this episode, we will look at loyalty through the lens of a brand leader. My guest today is Steve Habbi. He is an award-winning brand and design leader who has had an illustrious career spanning 20 years, where he sat at the pinnacle of brand transformation for some of the world's most respected institutional brands. He was Chief Brand Officer for the London Stock Exchange Group, as well as Chief Design Officer for HSBC. This is just two of the many brands he's had an opportunity to put his mark in his career that spans digital transformation, brand leadership, and customer experience. The purpose of bringing Steve to Let's Talk Loyalty and Loyalty TV was to pick his brain on some of the conversations I pick up when I'm among loyalty professionals. And so today, you can look forward to hearing his perspective on what really truly connects customers to a brand. And he brings in the idea of brand as utility, not so much the bells and whistles. We also look into the connected creative process when it comes to the customer journey, what he refers to as the wisdom of crowds, bringing in different players from across the organization to give input into what really brings the customer on board, from awareness all the way to retention. And then we look into what should brand be looking at when it comes to AI, and we get into a conversation on what the next movers and shakers are within that landscape. Now, this is just a snippet of what you will hear in this conversation with Steve and myself. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. Steve, welcome to Let's Talk Loyalty. It is an honor to have you here, and I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you very much. The same. I've really been looking forward to this. I'm glad we've had some dialogue before, and I think, let's get into it.
And because we've had some dialogue before, you would know the first question already, and that has to do with you as a leader, as a person. I'm curious to find out what has been one of those standout books that have influenced your style of leadership or just you as a person.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the book that probably has made a significant, if not the most significant, but is called Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it's by a professor, Jared Diamond, and it's really a book about anthropology and human evolution and those variables of guns, germs, and steel, and how it's led to human evolution and effectively the way the world lives today. And it may seem quite distant from the world of brand and marketing, but at the core of brand and marketing is understanding human behavior. And so I think it was really foundational to really understand the basics of what drives human behavior, needs, wants. Sometimes it's pretty primal. So I thought that was a really interesting book. I recommend it.
Yeah, it does get pretty primal, right? And when you look into the behavioral economics, just I'm always looking at why do people make the decisions that they do? What really drives it, underlining that behavior beyond what they are seeking to use as a utility, but what does it do for them as a person? So
Mhm.
that's a book that we will link on our show notes. And now that we have that on the go, we called you into this podcast to really look into your expertise as a brand expert. You are a brand architect. You worked in a number of different fields. You have transformed iconic brands from consumer brands to some very institutional brands, like the London Stock Exchange, for example.
Mhm.
So, looking at your career spanning 20 years, what would you say is the single factor that drives customers towards a brand? What is driving that behavior?
Well, it's always out of necessity. It's really people use brands because they're helping them solve a problem. There's a really good expression. If I go back to my university days by marketing guru Theodore Levitt, and he used to say, people aren't looking for quarter-inch drills; they're looking for quarter-inch holes. And I think that just really sums it up. It's because I'm not in market to build relationships with brands. I'm in the market for finding solutions to problems or enhancements that I may want to make in my life. And the easier that they are to use, the more delight and joy and certainty I get from them, then that's going to build a really good relationship. But I think the key point there is relationship if you want to be a strong brand.
Exactly, because there might be several products or services that may
Mhm.
solve the problem that I have. But I think
Mhm.
brand comes in when I start to make a decision between one or the other based on how I feel about that brand, based
Mhm.
on how I feel treated as a customer and how they remember me. And that's where we talk about loyalty, what's really driving that retention and keeping one customer going for one brand as
Mhm.
opposed to multiple choices that they have in the market.
Well, it really comes down to mental availability. It's like, do they know you for whatever they need right now? And so if a brand proliferates its identity into every segment of a customer's life, that might be really beneficial, and a customer may recall all of those parts. Like a Procter and Gamble might do that with different brands, but it's enormously expensive and takes a long time to build that mental architecture for customers around everything you do, because customers don't really care what you do or how your organization is structured. It comes down to, I have a problem, who can help me with my problem? It's really that fundamentally simple. And I've been a big advocate of consistency and mono brands and linear connected
Mm.
ecosystems, and that's about utility. Because one thing I've done in my career, I've created a lot of brands. I've probably gotten rid of more sub brands. But one thing through all the research I've never once heard is a customer saying, I would like more brands. It never come up. They want more utility, service, speed, cost, all that, but never, please give me something that's different. And so, yeah.
Let's double check on that and actually be more concrete because you have a lot of examples that you can
Mhm.
actually speak into, right?
Mhm.
So, one brand that you've worked on would be looking into the reward system with HSBC.
Mhm.
What was the value proposition there when you worked on that brand? What were you trying to change? Where was it before?
Mhm.
I mean, the utility is quite normal. People are looking to, put the money somewhere and save. But beyond that, what are some of the things that you thought of that helped bring that value proposition for that specific loyalty program?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, HSBC is such an enormous bank, and it really is a lot of things to a lot of different people in markets. And so, a lot of the job that I did as group head of brand design and management was really driving the consistency of visual identity, messaging, tonality, user experience, and then applying that across all channels, touch points, and whatever stage of the journey a user is in. And so what we tried to do with them is, the purpose of the group, the group brand and the promise was to, we refined it, opening up a world of opportunity. So everything we tried to do was make sure that whatever we were doing for customers, it was always paying off that expectation of opening up opportunity. And so the visual system, the tonal messaging, the user experiences were all organized around that. So when we get to the Rewards Plus program, it needed to carry through that look, the tone and feel. And the version before it was refreshed was a different color. It was animated with kind of illustrated characters and so on, which had a nice, warm, friendly feeling. It just wasn't universally applicable for a premium global brand. So it was nice. There was nothing really wrong with it. It's just when you look at it within the context of how you want customers to remember it, to recall it and use it, because ultimately it's about creating value. So if people don't remember it and don't use it, it's not really creating the value. So I think that was a really big, really important part, getting the whole purpose of the brand organized, the visual system, understanding where we add value, and loyalty becomes a really important lever. And I find when loyalty is used at each stage of a user journey, it's not something you sign up for when you leave or scan when you walk out the door, because it should reinforce value. And loyalty isn't just points or redemption, it's about how you feel about the brand. So there's a lot of different ways, generally non-monetary, that can add a lot of value as well. So yeah, we try to put that whole package together so that as a user is going through the experience, there's little solutions for whatever the user needs at that time.
And so looking at that customer journey, right, and the different points within
Mhm.
that life cycle loop, where were you as a brand finding tangible moments to connect with the customer, and what value were you bringing? What would have been the customer exchange between the brand and the customer on those key moments?
Well, it's really tempting, I think. So again, value I found at HSBC as a customer, again, because I don't work there anymore, but where I find a lot of value is the ease of the customer experience, the
Yeah.
consistency. And I can credit, in part myself and the team who've laid out the create.hsbc design system that connects the group. But it's easy to use now. The consistency's there. The interfaces are consistent. The login journeys are there. And now when I open my app, the redemption and points are in my credit card statement with an easy selection process to redeem immediately. Where if I go back kind of 2 or 3 generations, that was really frustrating as a customer, because I'd have to A, log into the website, B, request redemptions, and then they would mail me vouchers. And it's nice, but it's not, I can't redeem it at the point when I need it. So it's kind of a nice to have, but it's also a barrier. So I think the takeout there is loyalty should be ubiquitous throughout the experience. The transactional elements should be available when you need them to potentially augment or improve the experience. And again, HSBC is doing that now. If I'm speaking as a customer, I find it really, really helpful. And definitely lots of other brands are doing it as well.
No, I love that. I mean, it's that clear, frictionless experience what that you're speaking to. So from the login, receiving vouchers, redeeming them, that it's quite intuitive in the process. And you know that, I'm dealing with this particular brand because this is what I get from it. Yeah. So what you're talking about really is that experiential foundation, as well as also the emotional resonance, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, because it is there. It's like when I'm going to pay my credit card, I see the points that I'm like, so I'm kind of going through value before I have to pay it off. So it's value, and again, it's another ways to pay if I wanted to do that as well. But I think some of the other things I found, again, I'm not here to glorify HSBC, but I found at their sponsorship events, they have the premier lounges, and I find, again, it's no longer working there, that I find those really valuable if you go to golf or something, or rugby tournaments, and you go in and you have a premium experience simply for being a member. That I find is really helpful, because it paying off the proposition. I think that's a really core point, is what is the proposition and how are you continually reinforcing that? And that's the role of loyalty. I think sometimes where loyalty programs are a challenge is when they are siloed,
Yes.
separated, and I don't fault anyone who's running them and doing the best they can. I think that's an executive leadership decision, of saying, is it a bolt-on potential revenue driver and we can create additional revenue through this stream, or is it integral to the entire customer experience? And we
Agreed.
look at it through the whole user journey. And I think that's the legacy way. And I think brands like Uber, like I said, Air Canada now does it. Most brands are doing it now, where it's integrated. And then also, now that they've learned about me, there's the support with CRM and stuff, probably too much, but but I get value. I admit it. I buy discounted vegetables and fruit on
You
Mondays.
need to be careful. You're speaking to a CRM expert. But that being said, I absolutely take on the point that you raised earlier about the offline experiences, right? So it's
Yeah,
how do you integrate the digital experience with that lounge treatment or the sports and just getting customers in the physical environment and still enjoying
yeah.
that brand experience, and then it comes across in a different kind of way. So
Mhm.
maybe the next question is, as a brand expert, how do you show consistency across different customer touch points?
Well, to answer that, I'd probably back up a little bit. I think it has everything to do with putting multidisciplinary teams together
Yeah.
and helping them map out the customer experience. So when I was at HSBC and separately at the London Stock Exchange Group, I'd run, as head of brand, I'd run what I call the living wall. So anybody who was creating hero work was asked to come in on a weekly basis and to show their piece of work within the larger mosaic. It wasn't governance, but it just gave an opportunity. Sometimes it'd be 100 people there from virtually connected across the world, informing, opining on the piece of work. And then what that would do is that mosaic would show the customer journey. You know, they may have no idea what was happening at an airport
Mhm.
or CRM program, but now they do. They see it. And so, same thing I did at LSEG, the London Stock Exchange Group, where I called it the Creative Exchange. Any new work that was coming in or being produced across the portfolio, we'd arrange it and then have a debate about it and then look at the finer qualities and then take that away and inform how do you take this piece of work and use it to inform next best step. You know, what's the data that we can produce that will inform, you know, the next stakeholder who's producing a piece of work. So this one might be CRM and this one might be an event, and they may not be connected necessarily at the same time, but now they know there's a data footprint, there's more informed on the customer, and now we can do something that adds value. And so again, the London Stock Exchange Group, to my knowledge, doesn't have a loyalty program, but they certainly nurture an enormous amount of goodwill and drive an enormous a lot of value. Knowledge and thought leadership is the value. That is how you nurture loyalty. And then again, bring them out to events, raise awareness for their.
I love that. And you actually touched on a good point, right? That loyalty isn't points and it's
Mhm.
not, I mean, when we talk about it in the traditional sense, right? Loyalty is really just driving a habit that you can
Yeah.
build in order to kind of get the customer to continue to come back
Mhm.
um, and ultimately that there needs to be some kind of commercial exchange. But going back to what you said earlier, I'm curious, when you're in that room and you're doing the mosaic, right? And you
Mhm.
connected customer experience on the wall, who
Mhm.
are you inviting into the room? And how important is that to have different perspectives?
Extremely. First of all, I invite everybody I meet. I say, hey, you should come to the Creative Exchange or Living Wall. I'll put your name on the invite. And that
The
just is
leader,
just
is that the engineering architect? Is it
whoever wants to come. And then we record them and they're available. So it's kind of like if you want to know what's going on with brand and design, come. And so what we started doing is doing kind of smaller intakes
yeah,
where we would review with a group.
yeah.
That's on a Monday. The next Monday we'd have takes, and then Thursday was open venue, and we'd often have 150 people, just from around the world, designers, user
Wow.
interface people, the guy from facilities, you know, like that are just interested in a passing knowledge, but then also it's on they have an opportunity to inform it. So
The guy
we're
from Pacific,
creating,
you said.
and that's it, because someone might say, oh, we've created this new palette for our program, and then the branch guy's like, wait, hang on a second, that color, I can't put that in my branch, right? But they'd probably never met. So that it enabled this whole sense of open creativity and collaboration. And then what that did is it reduced the barriers and the challenge of governance, because it's the wisdom of crowds that's deciding on the future direction of the group. It's really create a venue, create a stage, and let the community moderate themselves with some nudges, and then we'd use that as feedback. So we take the information and then continually drop what the community needs to keep moving forward, but continuing to align it. So, but the point is around loyalty is connecting that and trying to see all those different entry points where loyalty could be an invitation, it could be a piece of information. It doesn't have to be points. And conversely, I just came back from a conference in Munich yesterday, and a European airline, will say, sent me at least 3 emails reminding me that the baggage size had to be a certain dimensions, and if they didn't, I I'd have to pay a £60 fee at the gate. Now, all they really did to me is ensure that I will only know them as the people who are going to try to gouge me. So that was my first time using them, and I will cautiously use them if I ever use them again. So that's a good example of how they've probably destroyed any potential loyalty that they could have created by just being so insistent that, we want you to pay for extra luggage.
But then I wonder if I might ask this question. I mean,
Yeah.
how frequently do you travel, right? So maybe to you, that's kind of like knowledge that is, I don't need you to tell me that. I'm aware of that, and I'm thinking from the business perspective, right?
Yeah.
Could that be a service to say that, avoid having to pay more than you should if you
Yeah.
adhere to these things? So how do you strike the balance between that could be a good service to the customer?
It could be. You're right, and I think you're right, but I think what they're doing there is projecting their corporate policy on the customer and saying, well, we decided no matter what, nothing bigger than 20 by 40 by 10 gets on the plane. You're like, it's an enormous constraint. I was like, my bag will, but then I bought stuff, and I was like, so all day I'm like, okay, well, if I take this Christmas present, then what happens? Am I have to pay £60 for this? Like, it ruined my whole trip. And then the flight was delayed, and then they ended up sending me on a different airline. So I will never fly with them again to start with. but I mean, the fact that I'm talking about them now, they probably looked at the 6 conversions to those CRM emails and thinking, this is working. We're driving growth in the short term.
Let's hope they did the A/B testing on that, right? And hopefully that this is one incident of dissatisfaction. But I mean, that's the principle. It takes one incident to lose a customer,
Yeah.
right? It does take one incident to lose a customer. So we've talked a little bit about travel. We've also talked about finance. I also know that you worked with Formula One, right? And let's talk about sustained dialogue really through different mediums like influencers and different mechanics that can drive conversation when it comes to a brand. Tell us about your work with Formula One and how are you able to achieve that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a fascinating client. I was on the agency side. I worked at an agency, Digitas, in the Publicis group, and they had been a partner of Formula One for some time. So they'd come to us asking for a digital transformation strategy, and it seems broad, and it was. It took us about a year and a half. So I was the lead creative strategy on the program, and it was great. We got to work with the leadership of the whole group, everyone except Mr. Ecclestone. But really the challenge that they had was they had kind of saturated the market. There was kind of not that many male Europeans left to kind of bring into the middle-aged kind of sport. And so a lot of what it started out with was one, clearly defining the purpose of digital. And all they had is a website. I remember them telling us they had 400 million fans and not one email or the ability to email a single fan. And this is 2016. And so we define the purpose of digital and then really looking at it through the customer's lens or the fan's lens. And the creative idea that I built the plan around was ignite my passion. So ignite, start a love affair, make it personal, then stoke the flame. And the reason we wanted to do this, or they needed us to do this, is because they had all their title sponsors, those major brands you see, but they had no ability to connect those major sponsorships to a single customer. Nothing. They were literally like, it's cardboard on a track. There's no connective tissue. So the digital transformation strategy was, how do you create a TV, mobile, second screen app, network connected experience? And then how do you drive more and more engagement? So that was the architecture, and then the creative strategy was on top of that. And so a lot of what we looked at was the ability to find data and find audiences and then use them, lookalikes, to engage new audiences. So lack of a better example, Justin Bieber was friends with, at the time, with Lewis Hamilton. So, we could talk to a whole bunch of Justin Bieber fans about the music at Formula One. And that's how you ignite my passion into a platform and then potentially connect them to one of their title sponsors who might be,
That's amazing. I mean,
So
it's
it's
about
a
those
flow through.
differences, right? The crossover between, what would necessarily not have been a Formula One fan, but the music category
The
brings it.
music, the fashion, yeah. And I mean, it's like that the pre-race on the kind of on the paddock is like they're going around and meeting all the celebrities. It's like I mean, that certainly didn't come out of mine. Martin Brundle was doing that long before I was involved. But there's so many passion points that you can work into, especially in a personalized world and personalized TV. And so it was a fully integrated system that we developed for them. But a lot of it was based on content. And so what we did with lack of actual customer data, because they didn't have data, is we analyzed web behavior and segmented the data and found there was about 5 segments. So it was kind of I forget the segments, race day hero and like the gearhead and the hometown racer and these and you could see the behavior of these come in for a while and they keep coming back and they just want specs. These ones are in town because the race is there. And so that gave us the foundation of segments and then a content strategy and then a way to engage them and influencer marketing. And you kind of propelled it all out from the core site. But the point, tying it back to loyalty, is there was very little that you could do as a Formula One fan between Sunday, and then a week and a half later, somewhere else, and then the entire offseason.
Sustained communication, and especially, I mean, that was very smart in terms of segmenting the database based on web behavior. So now you found 5 different segments that you can speak to, right?
Yeah.
I'm quite curious in that content supply process, and how do you speak to each of those audience in a personalized way? And how did it work? What were the priorities you had to consider? Like, where do we put most of our efforts? Do we see a lot more engagement or profitability with one segment or the other? What were some of the decision making around that process?
Well, it was really multifaceted because one would be growth in new markets. At that time, the USA, they had just finished their first, but funny, I was working on a critical mass on the Infinity sponsorship on one side of a Formula One race, and then I was on the Formula One side about a year later for the US Grand Prix. And so that one would be about growing awareness, engagement with the sport in the US, and then attracting sponsors. So it was all connected, but each market would have different engagement levels, different things. But the catalyst was creating value for the sponsors. That was kind of the foundation of the transformation, was how do we translate all of this awareness into actual, tangible, measurable value for their title sponsors. And through that, as a customer, as a fan, I can then also be treated to a premium experience through an authenticated Formula One. Maybe gives me discounts to hotels during race day. I can kind of get behind the velvet rope depending on my degree of participation with Formula One and their sponsors and partners.
Yes.
So it's really taking Formula One from what we described. I said, what you do now is content of. You just talk about the race, and you need to create content for. Yeah. Simple, but it's like you need to create all these different passion points, and then use that to communicate people on a regular basis. And then that's where it gets into the Adobe stacks and kind of all that personalization engines. But that's kind of the mechanics of how it works.
Each content item has a definite action that you want them to take, right? That way you're getting to learn more about each of the segments and then what more to speak to them about. Would you agree that is a logical flow of thinking?
Yeah, and because it goes 2 ways. It's kind of like once they have the data set, they can go get different sponsors that may be appealing to different segments and so on. And plus, then it's also the measurement performance of engagement through sponsored content, for example. You see a lot of that now, like the race might be sponsored by Tata Communications, which we now know who the audiences are. And they like Tata stuff. So.
And the question is that when you work with such an amazing brand, how close do you personally get, Steve, to the cars and the racing? Oh, Justin Bieber, Lewis Hamilton.
Not very close to them, but I did have the privilege of going to Silverstone and getting a tour of the whole production facility, walking the track, going through the paddocks. And then I got to watch the US Grand Prix from the Biggins Hills production studio. With their head of content in the full command booth talking about how we're going to improve this experience. So for me, that was, like I said, I think 2 years before I was watching the inaugural one in the US with Infinity Cars, trying to figure out their sponsorship of Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull Racing. And then 2 years later, I'm in Formula One watching it. It was fascinating.
It's not a bad life at all. And then you spoke about things that I wanted to just touch on. You know, how does that look like in a platform like Adobe? And it just brings me into the topic of AI. And you know, how do we, in the world that we're in, where things like, you know, search engine optimization is being challenged, and we have to find different ways of discoverability around that awareness part, you know, how can we best use AI agents, and what are your thoughts around where brand is going into, especially, you know, looking at that initial awareness that you've spoken about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a super idea or point. And especially I love the way you're thinking about it. Search is obviously typically early in a journey. So, and I think that has a lot to do with loyalty as well, because it's the recall, it's the awareness. I'm only going to look for people or brands that I
Yeah,
have a
absolutely.
favorable opinion for. And I think that's where AI and SEO is going to be quite a bit different. So SEO really follows a mechanical kind of schema of tags that a search engine can kind of go,
Yep.
here's all the information. Let's return it, and and whether it's an authority or not decides whether your search ranking, and of course the variable of pay. That's good, but it's a bit mechanical and it's quickly changing because search as a behavior, I think, is going to diminish a lot. I mean, people search is going to start happening in ChatGPT. So, for example, I don't search Timu for two searches I've done lately. One, looking for drones on Timu. I have no interest in going through Timu and finding a good drone, but ChatGPT will be my interface with all of the brands and all the platforms. So it knows me and it will only return stuff that understands me. So these kind of favorability will be a really important variable that an agent will learn me. It will rationalize that I like things that I'm favorable towards. It's not going to go, well, here's a schematic of alt tags that we think you'll like. It's going to learn my behavior. And so a lot of the content we're laying down now, I think, will either be considered authoritative and relevant for discoverability later. So I think there's going to be a change. So I think brands that focus too much on lower funnel and transactional and buy now and all that, I don't know that any of that's going to be relevant to an agent that I'm using to go, hey, I want to learn a new product, and it'll
Yep.
go troll through a whole bunch of sales data. I don't think that's how it's going to happen. It's going to look at ambient information and reviews and lookalikes and a lot more information, and it's going to tailor it to exactly what I need and want at that particular moment. So the challenge of what is the role of brand in potentially this new AI interface and
Exactly.
brands.
If I am a customer and I'm curious about a topic, and I am doing my search and I'm trying to discover how do I best find more information about this.
Mhm,
Let's speak as an example, healthcare, right?
mhm.
I'm looking to search something that's health related, and I'm trying to get information. For example, I have severe headaches, right?
Yeah,
The brand that, you know, solves that problem, typically they would have had strong SEO and websites that makes me go straight into their website so that I can learn more
mhm.
information. Now they're competing against the fact that I could go to ChatGPT to find that information. So where does brand intersect
Yeah.
that customer journey? Yeah.
Well, I think it's two. I had a really interesting conversation at the conference, speaking to a major financial publication, and we were talking about this because right now they're just kind of getting all their information ripped off. And they're like, I need to stem the tide. But then they're like, but it's also good because sometimes people will want to know the resource and come through. And we had this interesting conversation about probably I call micro branding. It's kind of like the powered by kind of moniker, which I had challenges with, but I think people will probably maybe I think brand loyalty may start showing up in prompts where I might say, look, I want to know broadly about a topic and I want you to use these sources. And that's what I was saying to them. I was like, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing ads like, on out of house ads, it just said, make sure your prompt includes this brand if you want to know about like lifestyle or healthcare. I could just see it. I can see the ad right now, and then maybe it's hashtags, maybe it's question mark, whatever the brand is, and you're telling the prompt engine that I value their opinion and I would like you to return results with their information. So I think that's going to be
World where there would be more information sharing, just educational around how do I find information, and people will be
Yeah,
free to kind of like, share hashtags, share prompts, and that's how brand can intersect that dialogue to be able
potentially, yeah.
to give that education. Like if you're looking for this, this is
Yeah.
your query that you should be
And
using.
and similarly, I'm sure, like, because now when I do a ChatGPT, it returns tons of Reddit. I've never used Reddit. I don't value the opinion of everyone Reddit. It might be good, but so for me to get prompt results that are all based on Reddit, I'm like, they're not valuable enough to me. I want my own curated kind of list of sources. So I presume that it will either learn them or I will tell them. And I would think that's, I think, going to be a big opportunity to build brand loyalty. And then I think also there'll probably be partnerships where ChatGPT or somebody has like exclusive arrangements with like, and that's, where I used to work with the London Stock Exchange Group. They had an exclusive arrangement with Reuters News to distribute their news through their platforms. That's a lot of value to LSEG and to their users. And I would assume other, large language models will plug into more proprietary data sets, and so brand will probably emerge through that as well. So I think the publishers, if they ever get paid for their work, will benefit from that. But yeah, I think the days of just kind of large language models using free information, I think there's too much money left on the table for people to let that continue happening.
It's a fascinating landscape, and there's just so much more to dig in. And I feel like the more I know, the more I feel like I don't know
Yeah,
with this area.
it's
But
totally leading a panel on the topic.
so now, Steve, as we round up the conversation, right, I want to bring us back to the silos that you spoke about earlier, and where can brand teams and loyalty teams intersect? In your opinion, right, where are those natural places for collaboration, and where do you see the teams pulling apart?
Yeah, it's a great question because unfortunately, a lot of times it comes down to the different P&Ls in an organization. So the loyalty team and the marketing team and the events team may be all different functions, but ideally they collaborate. And I think that speaks a bit to that multidisciplinary approach enterprises and brands should take. But I think when they work really well, it's the purpose of the brand is really clear.
Hmm.
The experience pays that off, and then the loyalty program reinforces it and collects data that informs, at the very least, what we know about a customer, their likes, their wants, their needs, and ideally becomes a catalyst for the next best action, which might be another event, it might be a discount, it might be upselling for a service. And so
Absolutely.
it should
But
be.
if we make that more concrete into an event, as you've mentioned, and you've worked with a few events, right?
Yeah,
So you have the brand team that reinforces the value of the brand, the emotional resonance, and we see that,
yeah,
the look and feel is there. You feel right about it, right? You have somebody in events that's making sure that, um, all the different items, the juice bar, the wine,
yeah.
everybody has a good experience. And then you have somebody in there from loyalty team that's making sure that we are capturing the data so that we can follow up on these customers and
Mhm,
offer them something later. In that situation where you have those different elements in play, where do
mhm.
you see conflict?
Well, I think conflict, yeah, and in that world, that's when tech team and brand team and marketing, they've all mapped out a tech stack that's integrated. The MarTech stack's connected. Where this friction is when what's often is you have a brand team with budget, you have a local marketing team with some budget and sometimes the same objective, and then you have probably the event managers. And through that process, you don't necessarily collect consistent data. You
Yeah.
know, I'll find a lot of events. It's usually just easier is lead generation for, you know, they'll host a contest and get new leads and emails, but that doesn't provide any value back. So you get these kind of, we yell about it, we do it, we transact, and then it's kind of all done. And somewhere in there, yes, we probably created some loyalty, but I think the ones that have that system connected, so it's more dynamic, more real, are the ones that do the best. But ultimately, it comes down to budget and what are the priorities and whose objective is the most important through loyalty programs.
No, absolutely. And if that data that's collected isn't then feed into the bigger system that would actually connect it with have we seen this customer before, right? Is this a first time customer?
Yeah.
So this is one other action that they've done.
Mhm.
following a number of other actions. So it's just additional information, like you were saying, so the right data insights, as opposed to it sitting in some
Mhm.
shelf somewhere and we have information about the customer, but we're not really connecting the experiences with previous events, whether they were digital or online or on site.
Again, because branding, it's about utility. And so it's not about we've transacted, therefore our loyalty program is good. It's about that sustained relationship. It's about that utility that a customer has with a brand, is really important. And I think loyalty is so much more than just that transactional element and kind of a points-based program. It is the utility, as I said, throughout the entire engagement. And I think that's really important. And there's a lot of brands like, so let's say Apple, for example. It's like, I don't know that they have a loyalty program, but they have extremely loyal fans. And that's in large part because of the brand equity that they've created. They project their brand in a lot of ways on the customers. If I have an iPhone, I'm part of that kind of community. And I think people pay for that. Obviously, the brand is strong. They pay, and they pay to be loyal in some cases to some brands. Whereas I think if you have a loyalty program that is kind of just transactional based, it's based on some amount of monetary currency. Those offerings don't necessarily connect back to what the core service is. Then it's not wrong, but it's how are you creating value? Like,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I and what I'm deducing from that is that loyalty is the outcome of a good customer experience and not the points and the
no,
the mechanics around that, right? But if the experience and if the service is memorable, that drives a loyal customer, drives habit, not necessarily the fact that, it's a transactional, do this, you get that, do this, you get that process.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, you don't really want customers that you have to pay to keep. If they're only staying there for the loyalty program, then they're probably going to be expensive and they're probably not going to be very loyal. I'd rather have customers that are loyal because I add a lot of value to their life. I listen to them, I understand them, I'm there when they need it, they remember me. And then if I can provide some value add, that might be tickets to an event, that might be points I can redeem, that might be inviting me out for a coffee, and so loyalty, it can come in a lot of different ways. But I think the key point is that it isn't just a transactional thing you add on that can be measured. It needs to be connected through the whole experience. And yeah, I think that's what makes them strong. Connected to the brand, connected to the teams, connected through the user journey.
Sounds great. I mean, you are a man with a lot of experience. You've worked with a lot of several brands. What is the one brand, whether you've worked with this brand or it's a brand that you admire, that you think are really nailing that customer journey well? And what are the takeaways from that brand?
Well, two I find myself using a lot. Well, Uber has become, I'm amazed at how it's transcended from, a taxi service to a mobility platform to arguably now it's a lifestyle brand for me, where it's mobility, it's groceries, it's food, it just occupies so much of what I do now. Expedia is similar. They've fully integrated all their different portfolio brands into one loyalty program. It's in the buy flow. I can redeem it if I need it. So both of those I have found myself quite loyal to. One, I get something in return, which I do notice, but that's not the main reason. But I think it's just smart. It's present. It offers me value. I can pretty much count on discount coupons every day. It's probably too many, but I do use them, so they keep sending them to me. So I think those two. But again, I think Uber has the advantage of it's platform based. Like it started with an app, and they've been able to bolt on a lot onto their platform and can keep it connected. I think brands that are trying to reverse engineer that, it's a lot harder.
And so to close it, Steve, I know that you have just recently left the London Stock Exchange where you were leading the brand portfolio. But, what does the future hold for you? What's up your sleeve?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I think it was an incredible opportunity. I was there for 2 years to help transform the whole brand portfolio, refresh the London Stock Exchange group itself, which is a unique opportunity to refresh a 300-year-old brand. And then we created the LSEG brand, which is now the new parent. And so after 2 years of that transformation, I'm going to just do my own thing for a while. So I'm going down the portfolio career route. I'm launching a historical fiction this side of Christmas called Our Fallen Woman. It's an epic about a girl who struggles in life and makes her way through London and eventually New York. So it's going to be exciting. But I'm also working with two startups. One's a fintech on asset management in emerging markets, and another startup I'm working on is a large language model aggregator, which is both really exciting, very innovative, and I'm excited. So I'll be doing that, and then I'm going to be doing a lot of thought leadership and consulting. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, I'm solarcoaster.com is my site, and you can get a good sense of the brands I've worked in, my approach to building brands as products, and really developing integrated systems that connect people.
Sounds amazing, and a good combination of things, right? You are writing a fiction book, you are getting into startups, and I like the topic of your book with the goal. I know that you're a goal dad as well, so maybe you get some inspiration from your parenting duties.
Yeah. There's a lot of consultation with my wife and daughter on the subject matter. So no, it's exciting. So I just find I have a lot of things that I can work on, which is kind of how I've been managing my career as portfolios. You're doing a million things at the same time, whereas now I'm kind of doing 3 or 4 with a lot more focus.
Exciting. Thank you so much, Steve, for such a riveting conversation, to say the least.
Well, excellent.
Good time to spend with you. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure.